Trying something new this time. I'm gonna use my phone and see if that works. Having problems with the GoPro connection. It's always flaky. The thing takes like an hour to connect. It doesn't work properly. So let's try this and hopefully you can hear me. Trying to see if I'm actually connecting here. iPad is not connecting. Okay, well that's not good. So how am I going to be able to see here what everybody is saying? Hey, so anyway, yeah, I can't seem to see the chat unless I see a quick questioner on there. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was just, I haven't spoken for like a month. So just do some quick updates. I was going to mention that as the temperature starts warming up now, I'm going to try busking again in March. Now, some of you may think this is a bad idea. I thought about it quite a bit, but it's been now since, I don't know, 2.5 years since I've been out there. And I need to get out. I need to get out of the house. I've been stuck here for over 2 years with absolutely no social interaction of any kind. And as you all know, it's not healthy. So even though the street can be really nasty, I am prepared for it just to get some kind of interaction. I mean, it's going to be good and bad as usual, and hopefully not too much bad. So I'm going to try again in March, and then I'm going to start, filming the busking as well. And we'll see how that goes. I'll probably only go out for a couple hours at a time. I'm going to try not to do 5-hour sessions anymore. I mean, that was really draining. And, who knows how much that accumulated stress attributed to my near fatal aneurysm last year. Because there was a lot. I was out there a lot, in the heat. And I basically was doing like 50 to 100 songs nonstop. I think my record was like 7 hours. I went one time from like, 2 in the afternoon till 9 at night. But I've got my lithium battery, which is going to last me the day. I got that on the last 2019 to replace the acid battery. So the battery situation will be fine. I'm not going to be running out. I had a problem with acid batteries always dying on me after a few months use. The problem with these acid batteries is that if you don't charge them properly or you let them sit, and they just start to die. So I would be, leaving it alone for a while, and then it would only work for a couple hours when it's supposed to be like 4 or 5 hours. So I was constantly taking it back to the store and getting a new one, and then it would do the same thing because they have to be really babied, these batteries. So I finally said, screw that. And I went out and got a lithium battery, which is actually the same size. It's like a motorcycle battery like this. And it's half the weight. It's like 2 pounds and a lot more battery life. And, it's like $100 more. So that's what's going to happen in March. And I will keep you informed of that. I debated whether I should try to do this live or not, but I don't know. I'm probably just going to, record myself and make a big announcement. Yes, I'm going to be back on the street. And then posting videos from these sessions. So let's see, maybe I get some more Sing Kids and Assorted Screaming Psychopaths as usual. Let's see what the people are going to be like. I'm going to get a QR code and a sign so people can tip if they want to do that when they don't have any money. So that'll be something new that I'm going to try. All right, so that's coming up. And as you can see, I'm also wearing my Shatnershairpiece t-shirt. I can move this here a little bit. This is one of my designs. It's me on the street playing guitar. So don't forget to check out Redbubble. The link is in the description and my comments. I think a lot of people have forgotten that I'm actually selling t-shirts, and you can get this on anything, a shower curtain if you want. So I've got about a dozen designs on there, and you can check it out, really good quality. I buy all my shirts from them. They don't pay me to talk about them. I just mention this because that's where I'm selling my stuff, and I think I get about 25-30% of the sale. So if you buy a t-shirt for 20, I'm getting like $4 or $5 at the most from that. But you can get designs and put it on anything, coffee cups and all that. So that's the link in the description. It's probably going to be t-shirt season soon. Hopefully it's going to warm up. Like I say, March is usually the earliest I can get out. When it hits around 12, 15 degrees, then it becomes bearable to actually play guitar without, my hands cramping up. So that's the earliest I got out. And that was like 2019, I think I still need a jacket, but it's bearable. So anyway, that's coming up. I also want to mention that Bandcamp has got the go-ahead for Bandcamp Fridays now, at least for the next 3 months. So I was worried that they were going to stop it, but it's going to continue the first Friday of each month. So it'll be March, April, May for sure. And the Bandcamp link is in there. Like I say, this is one of the few ways I make any money now from music. I mean, I'm not playing gigs anymore, don't have bands anymore. So it's basically what I get on the street and what I can sell for music on the website. So, check out my massive collection of jams on there, like 2,000, and I'm adding all the time because I'm still recording every day. I've been like on a streak for the last 2-3 weeks. I've been writing and recording every day. So I've got this backlog of video to put up. I think I've been uploading now to YouTube just to get it all on YouTube before, the hard drive crashes, which almost happened a couple of weeks ago. The drive with all my guitar videos that I'm, doing my live jams from home, it started to make the clicking noise. And I was like, oh no. So right away I got another drive ordered and started transferring all that material. And it took like 3 days to get all that backup onto the new drive. So luckily I saved it. I think I had only one file that had a glitch. So I'm happy I got that going, and I will be posting these over time. I think I have about, like 200 in the queue right now for just from live jam videos. And that doesn't include the jams I still have for the street that I'm doing. So I'm going to be mixing it up. If you noticed, it's usually going to be a band video, then there's going to be me playing at home, some extended jam, and then there's some busking video. So trading off. According to my poll now, I've asked what days people like to see videos or what they usually want to watch what day. And it seems the consensus is usually weekends. So I'm going to be probably skipping Monday to Wednesdays, and then just doing, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, keeping it down to 4 a week, and see how that goes. So that's usually when people have more time to view. Like if I do a chat like this, normally I would try to do it on a weekend when more people are available. But I just wanted to get this out here. The main reason too that I wanted to talk about was I'm going to be selling my records. I've thought long and hard about this, and I've been collecting albums since, 1977, when I was 15. And I have decided that I'm going to try and sell them. I have already sold albums before, years ago, but I still have a lot. And I'm not really using them anymore. I'm just basically been using recordings of these albums or Spotify. And so they're just sitting there taking up a lot of room. So I'm going to start going over some albums here that I'm going to get rid of. And like I say, I'm going to put up a list and I'm going to make it accessible. I don't know where I'm going to put it up yet. But if anybody's interested in my vinyl, just talk to me in the comments or email me at Shatnershairpiece@yahoo.com, and we'll see what we have here. So this is basically everything that has influenced me as a musician and a guitar player from when I was a kid. I started albums in 77, and I probably stopped buying. I think my last album bought was around, I don't know, 1987. So it was basically 10 years, and then CDs started coming in, and then nobody was really buying albums anymore. And then it started again. And I still bought albums, used. And so I had this massive collection of guitar music and stuff. So when I talk about some of these things, you'll see some of the things that have influenced me as a guitar player when I started out. So I have stuff like this, Gary Moore, very rare. This is a solo album he did in 1973. This is, yeah. So that's sample. I have Gary Moore stuff. I have, things like ZZ Top, De Guelo. I bought this album when I was in school, 1979. I remember going on lunch break to buy this at the store, and I came back and I didn't go to class. I just went to the library, put on some headphones and listened to the album. That was a great memory. I totally remember that. I usually have, memories associated with all my stuff. Here's another classic from Gary Moore. This is a Coliseum 2 with John Heisman and Don Airy on keyboards, and Gary right here. So this was a very influential album for me. I picked this up, around the time I got into Thin Lizzy, which was like 70, 79. I quickly found Gary Moore's back catalog of music. Now this is like fusion rock, and they did 3 albums, and of course they went nowhere. He eventually rejoined Thin Lizzy. I think this was like 77. This is a German edition. So I used to learn lots of things from this. That was sort of my introduction to more technical styles of guitar playing. I got stuff like this, Fleetwood Mac, Then Play On. This is a, 1969 album. So all these are from my personal collection, and they've all been well taken care of. Most of these have probably been only played a couple times, and then I would transfer them to records right away. So that was always my MO, was to buy the album, and once I had a cassette deck, it was like, okay, record it, well, it's in perfect condition, then file the album away. I didn't really use albums that much unless I was learning a song. I think before I even had my cassette deck, then it was the needle back and forth to learn something. And then I also had 8-tracks. So my dad had an 8-track collection, and I would listen to his stuff, and then he had some albums as well, and I had to use his record player to learn guitar solos. I was always in the living room on my knees next to the stereo cabinet and moving that record needle back and forth 1,000 times, figuring out Dire Straits and Jeff Beck and Rush and UFO and Scorpions and Robin Trower and ZZ Top and Hendrix, whatever I was surrounded by. So here's another one, big influence on me. One of my favorite groups of all time, Free. Paul Rogers, he actually lives not far from here I think it's White Rock. That's a short drive outside of Vancouver. I think he's married to a Canadian woman. So I saw him in concert about 5 years ago. He did a lot of Bad Company. That was the only time I saw him, and he sounded great. He was in good shape, sounded just as good as ever. He had the ex-guitarist from Heart, playing with him at that gig. So this is the classic Free album, 1970, Fire and Water, and that's on A&M. So I have a few. I think I have all the Free albums. I also got stuff like James Gang. I've got about 3 albums, originals from the James Gang. That's also influential. Joe Walsh, love Joe Walsh, including all the solo stuff. I still got Led Zeppelin, In Through the Outdoor. I think this is the only one I've got left. But that's got the original inner sleeve and everything. Again, probably played once. I've got lots of Kate Bush, original pressings. And this was our first album. That has a different artwork. I also have lots of soundtracks. I was big into soundtracks. I got really rare stuff like this, Last American Virgin. So this was something that never got released on CD. And it's actually quite an interesting collection of songs on there. But soundtracks was a big thing for me when I was on eBay. I used to sell them on CD all the time. lots of rarities that I would pick up. I got things like this still. Howard the Duck. This is a great album. Terrible movie, but just a fantastic album. And I'm not really into sort of like mid-'80s synth rock or anything like that. But there's some really catchy songs on here. And, you know, surprisingly, you know, one of those movies that sucked but had a great album to it. I still got more ZZ Top. This was, of course, LaGrange, where it came from. And that's what I play on the street all the time. So that was, I learned every song on this album when I was a kid. So when I was 15, I was just doing, you know, note for note copies. And ZZ Top, big influence on me. And now here's a real rarity. It's Devo, first album. And this is an original. This was one of the first albums I bought after I bought Rolling Stones albums. I had all the Stones albums, and I had nothing else but Stones albums. And then I saw Devo on Saturday Night Live looking like this. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I immediately went out and bought the album because they did this killer version of Satisfaction. And this is what we call the vomit-colored vinyl. I mean, look at that. This is something I have been hesitant to sell, but I might sell it. You know, if I get a good offer. It's definitely worth money. The original first album, very influential, classic band. I was totally into them. I had all their albums. I think I sold a few of them already, but I kept that one because that was like, you know, the sentimental value. So here's another band that was a big influence on me, and a movie that goes along with it. One of my favorite films of all time is Thief with James Caan, a guy that I often got compared to. Like, people used to say I looked like him, and I think it was the hair. We had a very similar hairstyle. So if you look at a movie like, what was it? The Rollerball movie he did in '75. There's scenes in there where I will see him and I'm going, yeah, I looked exactly like that when I was younger. So anyway, this is Tangerine Dream that did this soundtrack. It's a Michael Mann film. He basically redid this movie as Heat in 1995. But this is 1980, 81 was Michael Mann's first film, and one of Caan's probably his greatest role. Absolutely loved the movie. Absolutely loved the music. So I grew up with sort of an influence of, you know, things like Kraftwerk and Tangerine Dream and Jean-Michel Jarre, along with all the guitar work. So that's why I actually like playing that kind of music and soloing over it. I write my own things in a similar style, but this is like the greatest Tangerine Dream soundtrack, and they did many, and I have them all. Here's another classic. This was what got me into Gary Moore in 1979, Thin Lizzy's Black Rose album. Black Rose is an incredible track on there. It's just amazing guitar work. I was just blown away when I heard that. And at this time, I was sort of into guys like Michael Schenker and Uli Roth from the Scorpions. But Gary Moore blew me away with this. Again, this is original sleeve. This is like pristine. So, you know, I was into artwork. This was the kind of thing that made me want to buy albums, you know, when you saw that. And this art a lot of work for Thin Lizzy. So that was probably the peak album, I think, for Lizzy, and then it started kind of going downhill. Gary Moore only stayed with them for one album, and then they got Snowy White for the next three albums, and then they eventually broke up due to drug abuse. I've got lots of things like this. Here's a classic from Ry Cooder, another fantastic guitar player. And this was called The Border. This album you cannot get. They might be on some weird CD label somewhere, but this is an example of classic, I don't know, like what you would call it, roots country. I know what Ry Cooder's like. Great album. He also did Alamo Bay, another one of my favorites. This is what, you know, music that got me into movies, and often would get these albums and not even see the movie. I was like really into it. I still have this. I bought this one in 1981. I went and saw the movie. This is a heavy metal, which was, you know, a big deal at the time. It was animation, and they had lots of great songs on here. Devo, Cheap Trick, Blue Oyster Cult, classic. I still have my original Rolling Stones. I think I bought this in '78. This is I think their third album. One of the better early ones, Rolling Stones Now. It had Heart of Stone on it. So I think this might be the last of my Stones albums. I think I sold all of them in a bulk thing on eBay years ago, because I had already cleared out some, like Blue Oyster Cult. I had all their albums, and I just sold them all at once because it was too much to send them all separately. So right now I've started putting things up on eBay, and I think I started with Aerosmith. So I'm going to slowly be going through this. Here's probably the very first album I got. I think it was. This is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a movie I saw in 1977. My grandmother, who was a Jehovah's Witness, she used to pester us constantly with Jehovah stuff. And when I showed her this album and talked about this movie to her, and I remember that was 77, so I was 15, she said, "It's all bullshit. That doesn't exist. There are no aliens." She like total Debbie Downer. I came back, I was really excited about this movie, and she's like, no, it's all bullshit. In German, of course, she was talking to me. I mean, I love my grandmother, but we did not appreciate being constantly, harassed with Jehovah's Witness stuff. And that's what she used to do. This is even in the album, the theme song, which was on the radio. This came with the album. So I still kept that. That's kind of what got me into John Williams. And yeah, so that was my first album probably. And then I got Elvis. My parents gave me a box set of Elvis, best of, like 6 albums spread out over movies and everything else. I remember I got that for Christmas in 77. So I think the Close Encounters even predated that. So again, it was like I was going to the cinema already. My very first movie I probably saw was Jaws in 76. So then, of course, Spielberg, the summer of 77 was the big one, because I saw Close Encounters and Star Wars within weeks of each other in the cinema. I still have, very clear memories of that. It's funny how these things stick with you, Here's another one. A classic from Tangerine Dream, Flashpoint. You cannot get this anymore. Most people have never heard of this film. This is absolutely phenomenal album from Tangerine Dream, and nobody's ever heard it. It's like, it's great. It's different from their other stuff. I mean, they did a lot of small movies like this that were not really known. I mean, this is Chris Christopherson, and who's the other guy? Treat Williams, yeah. So I think that was 85, and you can't get that on CD or anything. That's like really rare. And then here's one of my favorite guitarists who died last year, Leslie West from Mountain. This is the classic Mountain album. This is like an original from like 1971. Nantucket Sleigh Ride, and it's the gatefold version. I don't know what label this was. It's on Bell Records. But yeah, I still have my A&B sound sleeves here. I used to buy these, tons of them, and I sleeved all my records right away. A&B Sound was a store that I used to go to a lot as a kid. That's how I started buying albums, was A&B Sound in Vancouver. I would take the bus in from Abbotsford, where I lived, which was like, 2 hours out. I'd come in on the weekend with my, 20, 30 bucks from working at the chicken restaurant. And I would buy 5, 6 albums at least with that. And there were just tons of stores. I mean, there were like a dozen on like one street. So that's what really kept me going in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. So I'd say, yeah, the most of the time on my buying was like 78 to 83, 84. So bulk of my early collection came from A&B Sound. And those are the days when you just go into the store and they'd be playing, on the turntable, and you wouldn't have any clue what it was. And they'd be like, "What is that? That's really good." And I have to go look. Oh, it's this group called Santers, a Canadian band. And that's how I got introduced to a lot of things. Or I heard it on the radio, and I was like, well, who's this band? And then I'd have to go find it at the record store. So yeah, those were great times when vinyl was still pretty cheap, $4.98 on sale. So I also got things like this, again, for artwork. It's Frank Frazetta cover. Molly Hatchet's first album. I absolutely loved the song, what was it? Flirtin' with Disaster. That was their big hit. massive guitar solos. So yeah, I bought a lot of my things at A&B Sound, and later on, years later, when I did eBay for a living for 5 years, I bought a lot of soundtracks and CDs and other things from there and resold them to the States, where the exchange rate was like 1.5. The dollar was just terrible. So you could sell a $10 CD and make $16 for it, and usually they were really cheap at A&B. So I'm also selling. Here's my Aerosmith collection. That's from '79. Night in the Ruts. Yeah, just switch the R and the N. And that was Draw the Line. I put this up already on eBay. This was '77. This has an absolute killer song on here. It's probably my favorite Aerosmith song, called Kings and Queens. Check it out. That's sort of when they got into their, drug phase, and they started to lose it. And here's the classic Aerosmith album. This is definitely their best album, and that is Rocks from '76. Not a bad song on it. It's full blast. It's great. And I still have also the album with Walk This Way. This is an original Canadian pressing from '75. Sweet Emotion is on there. So that was probably the first big Aerosmith album. I remember when I was in school, 13, school dances, Walk This Way was always played. Same with this, also played at my school dances when I was a kid in '74, '75. Everybody was playing Ballroom Blitz and Fox on the Run. This is the classic Sweet album. And I think they made it up to like '78. Remember Love Is Like Oxygen? That was another classic from Sweet. I even have rare things like this. I don't know where I picked this up. It's Tommy Shaw solo album. Again, hard to find. And I got rarities like this. The Sensational Alex Harvey Band. I love this band. Again, not really well known. Alex Harvey, and they had at least 6, 7 albums starting around '72 up until, I don't know, '78, '79. And then he actually died fairly young, Alex Harvey. But that was a great band. And I've got some rare bootleg stuff like this, Roxy Music. This is called Better Than Food. I can't remember what this is from. These are original tracks from, live tracks from '74 in concert broadcast. Yeah, so, in my record store searches, I will often find things like this and pick them up. So here's another album. This is an interesting story. This is an album I stole. Yes, when I was when I was a kid, me and my friend used to go down to a store. It was like a drugstore in Abbotsford, and he had told me that he was like getting away with stealing records, and of course I didn't have any money, and I was very intrigued by this. And how many vinyl LPs have I got? I don't know. I've probably got about 500 albums right now, and I don't have any Rick Wakeman. So this is an album that I picked up in the store. I'd actually gone into this place, and there was hardly anybody ever there. So I was starting to do the same thing, like sticking them under my jacket. And I remember that this was one of them, T-Rex. That was their 1972 album. The good old days. I still have some of those records. I don't know how many I left. I think I stole some Beatles albums, and I got the Kings album, a double greatest hits. And there's the T-Rex Electric Warrior. This is the one with Bang a Gong, which is a album that that song my dad played all the time because he had an 8-track collection. And also got me into guitar music was hearing Bang a Gong, the classic riff, dat 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 da 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 dat dat. That's a classic. And wasn't known as a superb guitar player or anything, but that was a classic song. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying the videos and my guitar. That's great. I'm just trying to read these comments as they go by, so I'm sorry if I've missed some because I don't have a history right now. I'm trying to see if I can actually view this on the YouTube here, but it doesn't seem to be showing my live stream. So I don't know why that is. It's supposed to be live and it should be showing me, but there is no record here. I don't know what's going on. Okay, and here's again another thing too. Rare 80s album. This is not something, I don't know why I picked this up, but I probably figured it was rare. But anyway, Breakin', that's an 80s record. Here's a really rare one. This is Billy Workman. He is the brother of Nanette Workman, a Canadian musician. She's more well known than him. He released, I think, maybe only this album in '78. And this was a great album that they actually played a song from this on the radio. It was called Boogie Home, which is absolute classic. Now this whole album is great. There's some great musicians on here. On guitar, Walter Rossi, Canadian guitar player, and also Frank Marino, one of my top 5 guitar players of all time. You can see it there, song listing. Frank Marino, totally underrated Canadian classic who influenced many people. How much for the heavy metal record? I don't know. You can make me an offer. I'm not sure what it's worth, but if anybody wants to, make offers to talk to me, just leave the comment and then I can get back to you. So anyway, this album, it never made it onto CD, and I think I've posted some tracks from this on YouTube. Just want to say, you're very talented. Enjoy your playing. Hopefully one day I can play even a fraction of as well as you. Well, thank you very much, and I hope that I've inspired you to keep playing guitar and keep at it. I'm still doing it after 50 years, and I'm still keeping at it. So the story behind this is I got this album, and then I made a really nice vinyl rip, just recorded it, cleaned it up. I was actually in contact with Frank Marino, and he lives in, I'm not sure where he is. He might be in Montreal. And he didn't even have a copy of this. So he talked to me I was talking to him about this, and I said, hey, Frank, because he has a website where he talks to his fans, and I said, I've got a really pristine copy of Billy Workman. Now, he was kind of excited about that because he probably hadn't heard this, because he didn't even have a copy, and it's very hard to find. And he's playing on at least half the album. So I sent him the WAV files for this album. And that was really cool because, at least he got to hear some music that he had actually been on and didn't even have a copy of. So this is super rare. Now here's also great memories on this album. I can check this out. Tanya Tucker, TNT. Now, you can probably figure out why I bought this album when I was 15. I think it's pretty obvious. And even more obvious when you see the inner sleeve here. I mean, look at this. This was probably on my wall for at least a year. Now, it was obviously a blatant attempt to sell Tanya, for sex appeal, because she wasn't this way before that. I mean, she was a straight country singer, and she was still very young. I mean, she was probably about 18 on this album, which came out in '78. And I had not, of course, been interested in her. I mean, she was just country. But this was her attempt to break out of country in '78. Still some great songs on here. She did a great cover of Not Fade Away. That was one of the best ones. And it wasn't really country, but great memories of this album. And then I had made a recording for my dad. He really liked it too. So usually when I got these albums, of course, we played it on the same record player that my dad had, so he was totally into this as well, because he was into country music and rock and that kind of thing. He was listening to everything. So I have also lots of soundtracks like this here. This one's still sealed, Jagged Edge, which was a great movie from the mid-'80s. So, I haven't even done anything with these albums yet. I even have this, here's another classic. Sealed copy of The Man Who Would Be King, music by Maurice Jarre. Now that's Jean-Michel Jarre's father. He did a lot of great music in the 70s and 80s. I believe he did the soundtrack to Witness with Harrison Ford. And then I have this one. It's not a movie that I really cared about, but I don't know. I must have picked it up cheap in the store somewhere. Blue Lagoon with what's her name, Brooke Shields. Yes, I never saw that movie. Here's a classic. This is one that I have great fond memories of. Jean-Michel Jarre, Oxygen. I have a T-shirt with this, and this is sort of my first electronics album. Again, this came out in '76, but I didn't become aware of it until later on. How many vinyls I have? I don't know. I've got about, I'm guessing about 500. I'd have to count them right now. I'm just sort of reorganizing everything alphabetically because it was a bit of a mess. So this one I got, the way I heard this music was we had a late night TV movie feature every night. Was starting at like midnight on a couple channels, and their intro was sort of a nice montage of highlights of different movies. You know, they'd show Star Wars, Death Star blowing up, and there would be Burt Reynolds doing something, and you know, a nice little collage. But the music they used was a bit from this album, and it was always the best thing for me. It was like, oh, that movie's going to be on the midnight movie. And they would play, 30 seconds of this great electronic music. And I was like, what is that? I want that. And then, of course, you never knew where it was coming from because they just used the theme. And then I think I eventually ended up buying this album for some reason because it was $1 in a bin or something. And then I played it at home and I actually heard that music and I was totally freaking out. I was like, yes, that's it. So it was like total chance, a fluke, that I found the music to this theme. And that's what got me into Jarre. I mean, his was probably still considered the best album that he ever did. And I used to fall asleep to this all the time. Like, that was my thing, like mellowing out to some electronic music. And at night, because I was always listening to music at night. At the speakers, right up in my bed. And then I would fall asleep to an album. Because, you have 20 minutes to get to sleep. So that was always great. And Jarre was a big thing for me. So guys, Tangerine Dream, Jarre, Kraftwerk, I think were big three, electronic wise. Here's another classic, a very underrated group. 10cc. This is their best album, Sheet Music from 1974. Again, I think I picked this up when I was in the States. I went there with my parents. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe I had read that it was a good album because I used to go by reviews. So I probably went to the store and then I was like, oh, I heard this is good. I'll take a chance. And that's that Hypnosis cover, the interesting style. They did a lot of great album covers in the 70s. Lots of Pink Floyd, UFO. And this album, I think I played one song from this on the street, Wall Street Shuffle. But the whole album is great. I mean, it's like an art rock classic, absolute classic. It's like a desert island album, I would consider that. Somebody asked me about Jeff Beck. I think this is my last Jeff Beck album. It's the Orange album, and this is with Cozy Powell and Max Middleton on keyboards. This came out, I think, in '72. Yes. He did 2 albums with this lineup. And then after this album, he went back to, it was Beck, Bogart, and a piece, that trio. And then he went into instrumental music, Wired and Blow by Blow. And that, I think this was his last vocal album ever. I don't think he ever did a vocal album again until like recently he got together with some female singers in the last 10 years. But he basically went completely instrumental for at least 20 years after this. This is still a great album. I really like it. And, he had the Jeff Beck group with Rod Stewart in the beginning in the late 60s. But I really like this guy. I think it was Bob Tench on vocals. So here's another one that also, I was like, oh, should I sell these? And I was hesitant, but I might. Blackfoot. A really great hard rock, southern rock. How many more pounds are you going to get? I don't know what that means. How many more pounds? So this was an album, again, a band I absolutely loved, heavily influenced by them. like in around 79 when everybody's into Van Halen, I was into Blackfoot. This came out in 81. They named their albums, well, usually they had pictures of animals. This was probably the last of their great albums before they were told they were too ugly and they had to change their music and add synthesizers. It was the downfall of a lot of ugly 70s bands. I mean, okay, they're not all ugly, but they would actually say, oh, we don't like your guitarist here. He's losing his hair and he's ugly. You need to get him out of the band. And they would actually listen to that. That's destroyed so many bands that came out of the 70s, especially Southern bands, and they had to change their style from hard rock to adding synthesizers and getting ready for new wave. So that's why I stopped really listening in the 80s, because it became Duran Duran and Flock of Seagulls and, electronic drums, and I didn't care for it. I stuck with my music from the 70s. Hey, Robin, it's great to see you. Hi, Linda. Nice to see you, too. So these guys were 3/4 actually Native Americans. And Rick Medlock, the singer, guitar player, are one of my heroes. I used to play like every song off this album. It was just a great mix of amazing vocals and amazing guitar work, twin guitar attack, fantastic drummer, and Jackson Spires. I think it's him here. He died about 10 years ago. This band, very acrimonious breakup, and they never spoke again after they had to dissolve the band after infighting, because they couldn't sell anymore and they were not be able to fit into the new wave, so they just broke up. And that's what happened, unfortunately. And they had this album as well, Tom Catton. That was the 1980 album. I still remember buying this in the store. Absolute killer tracks on here. And I used to play a lot of Blackfoot in my bands as well. A lot of people don't know these bands. They know Leonard Skinner, and they not even aware that Rick Medlock, the singer, guitar player, used to play drums for Skinner. Like before they became famous, like on their first album or so, he was the drummer. This is a real rare Blackfoot album. It's their first one from 1975, and that you cannot get anymore. That's like it's a U.S. pressing, but it became quickly forgotten because it didn't sell, and then they had to, they did the Strikes album in 1979, which then became known as their first album. So, here's another one. This too I had stole from the drugstore in the late 70s, and I still have it. I think it probably got played once or twice. It's like a Best of the Kinks there. So, great memory. I even got some nice classic Canadian rock. Here's another band called Harlequin. I think they were out of Toronto. They had became known after this album for some more radio-friendly romantic ballads. But this first album was more rock, and that also never made it to CD, and it's not even on Spotify. They had about 2 songs from this on the radio all the time, and that's why I went and bought it out. One of the best ones, it's called Sweet Things in Life, absolutely classic song. And Hypnosis cover. You always know it's Hypnosis when you can't make sense of it. It's like, what does that mean? That's what was always interesting about their covers. So that's Canadian rock. And here's another one, sort of underrated guitar player, Randy Hansen. He's known as one of the best Hendrix impersonators alive, if not the best. And he's still doing it. This was his only released album, I think, 1980, of original music, except there's maybe one cover on there. But he is not a guy I ever saw live. And I picked this up for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe I read a review. It's like, it's a guitar player. I have to get it. So great guitar player, and I preferred actually when he did his own stuff. I don't think, he didn't sell much with this, and then he just went back to just doing straight Hendrix shows. Not a pretty guy, but absolutely devoted to replicating every facet of Hendrix. Really good at what he does. But this, again, is something that never made it to CD. I think I upped the whole album on YouTube. I ripped it and put it up. And lots of people still go there and listen to it. Here's another cute one. Now, everybody knows John Fogerty from Creedence. This was his comeback album after basically 10 years off out of the music scene because of his legal hassles with Fantasy Records and Saul Zaentz. The teeth, could I do the teeth trick thing? No, I have never even attempted to play guitar with my teeth. I would think it's totally ridiculous. I mean, it's just like something even Hendrix admitted was ridiculous. He only did it probably just to break in, be outrageous, play with your teeth, but it's not something he would have considered years later. He didn't do it. It's more like, okay, I did that to become known, but no, I would never do that. But anyway, yes, so everybody knows this. This was The Old Man Down the Road, and of course the baseball song, which was Center Field. I saw Fogerty about 3 years ago. Last time I've seen him at least three times. I think 3 times, like 88, 97, and then again in 2017. Fogerty, so here's the story with Fogerty. He's probably my number one influence to get into extended guitar solos. I've talked about this on my Patreon page. I have a thing called The Art of Zen Guitar, where I talk about my history and influences and everything. There's a whole bunch of videos. If you sign up, it's like $20 a month. You get to see all these videos where I'm doing like some guitar instruction, guitar advice, also talking about important things that I learned over the years, advice and tips. And I talk about Creedence and how much they influenced me. Because my dad had the greatest hits of Creedence in like 1970. And he played that all the time. He played it at home. And then when we were in the truck going out, or, he had an 8-track player in the car and the truck, he played Creedence. So I quickly became enamored with Fogerty's extended jams. And that's probably the main reason I am a jam player now, was songs like Heard It Through the Grapevine and Susie Q, which, were taking up a whole channel. I remember the channels on 8 tracks, it was like 4 switching. You had like 10 minutes on each channel. But anyway, I absolutely loved that type of playing. And, it's always like, oh, they finally stopped singing. I was always happy that they stopped singing so I could hear some guitar work. So, and that was like, I was probably 8 at the time. I had been hearing Rolling Stones previous and Johnny Cash and lots of 50s bands and Elvis and Hino and Nana Muscuri and all this other stuff that my parents played. But Creedence is really what got me into the jam. And I still love those solos. Like that playing still to me is great. I wasn't listening to Santana. I wasn't listening to Hendrix at the time, or Cream. I didn't become aware of them until like 10 years later. But I was very familiar with Fogerty, and so I learned a lot from that. He wasn't like a super flashy player. He was an emotional player. He didn't overplay. There's always a lot of feeling in his playing, and he's still a great. I think he even became better at lead over the years. When I heard him in his last couple concerts, he actually improved. And most players don't improve. They sort of hit a peak and then they go downhill, like Jimmy Page. Can't play anymore. So this album, of course, when Fogerty came back in 85, I was still living with my parents, I think, for a year. And I quickly went out and bought this. And of course, my dad loved it. I was always happy to make him cassettes of these things because I knew he would enjoy the music. My dad died, by the way, like 3 years ago in his sleep. So it's because he's playing this kind of music all the time that I grew up with, all these influences, and it really affected my, what I liked as a guitar player. So the jamming thing definitely comes from Fogerty. Now this album is the original pressing that still had the song on here called Zaentz Can't Dance. Now that title was changed to Krantz Can't Dance or something stupid, but it was obviously meant for Saul Zaentz. And the lyrics are still intact on this lyric sheet. Where is it? Let's see. Zance can't dance, but he'll steal your money. Watch him or he'll rob you blind. So out in the street, a crowd is gathering, pushed down by the heat of the building. They're wanting to dance, making their way up the street. A boy with a pig and a radio. Little Billy can work on the crowd, put him into a trance for that little pig Zance. Now, if you know the history of Saul Zaentz and Fogerty, it's quite nasty, as Zaentz took control of everything Creedence did, and Fogerty was so upset he basically stopped producing music, and he refused to play Creedence material for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So at this time, he was still in his, he absolutely wanted nothing to do with Creedence. He didn't talk to the former band members. They were trying to sue him as well. Saul Zaentz had all the rights to Fogerty's music. And Fogerty actually got sued by Fantasy Records for this album because they accused him of sounding too much like Creedence, if you can believe this. Yes, that was an actual court case where Fogerty had to defend sounding like himself as a solo player. They were like, no, this is too much like Creedence. We own the rights to Creedence. Even though you wrote every song in Creedence, we're still going to sue you because your new song, Old Man Down the Road, is definitely derivative of Creedence. Yes, well, guess what? Fogerty won that lawsuit. So, there was at least a bit of justice in the world. I mean, this guy went through hell with the lawsuits and the pressure and, and not being able to produce music. He was just like, he couldn't do it anymore. And this was his comeback to get back on the scene. And so this was quickly flagged by Saul Zaentz and Fantasy Records. And they said, no, you can't have that. You better change it. So they were legally required to release another version of this album with changing the title from Zance Can't Dance. And it's not even spelled like Zance spelled Z-A-N-Z here. That's not the spelling of Saul Zantz's name. He's dead, by the way. And I think a lot of people are quite happy about that. But anyway, the whole history of Creedence, it's basically, they were ripped off. Everybody made money except Creedence. I mean, Fogerty was almost broke by like 1973, completely broke. And this was his comeback. So this is a rare album because that printing doesn't exist anymore. I think he might have even had to change the lyrics within the song. Like he had to redo the whole song because of it being too much an obvious hit on Saul Zaentz. So I was happy to see Fogerty. Then I think I went with my dad in 1988. That was Fogerty's second album that had come out, Eye of the Zombie. And we were like, this is going to be great. And we didn't know that he wasn't doing Creedence. So all we got was material from his two solo albums, which was that one and Eye of the Zombie, which was considered terrible almost by everybody. So basically he had one album. And we're like, what? There's no Creedence? Nothing? No Down on the Corner? Heard It Through the Grapevine? Nothing, because Fogerty refused to play any of that music. So we felt ripped off, but that's the way it was. And that was 88. And then when I saw him again in 97, he had a big band, and then he was back to doing Creedence. So I was quite happy that he finally put that all behind him. And he's still out there, The last thing I wanted with my dad was, because I knew he was sick because he had cancer, and then he was recovering from cancer, and because they had his bladder removed. And anyway, I knew he didn't have a lot of time left, even though he kept telling me he was fine. But I was getting these tickets to Fogerty like over 3-4 years ago, and I was like, I'm gonna go see the show, and we were ready to go. And then like days before the concert, I talked to him, and he's like, "Oh, I can't go because I fell down." He was had a bad reaction to his chemo drugs or whatever he was taking at the time. I mean, I don't know. That might have killed him as well. See, my dad was, he was like a healthy old stock German guy who basically grew up doing physical labor. I mean, that's what he was. He was a carpet layer, and he tried to pull me into that business as well. And of course, I'm a guitar player. I had absolutely no interest in physical labor, but I was forced to help him on the job and, hammer nails into concrete and wood and do this all day. It was just mind-numbingly boring. I don't think anything about Radiohead guitar work. I can't remember if I've even listened to them. So I had to go work with my dad and do these terrible jobs. And of course, I'd get depressed. I was like working at home. And then the only thing that gave me any joy was to be able to get home and play guitar. So I was like, I was already out of school, which was hell. And then I had to go into the hell of doing carpet laying work. You're breathing dust and who knows what else, asbestos and shit. My dad went through all that stuff for years, and that's probably not, it didn't help his health, what he was exposed to chemically, because nobody wore masks in those days. He was constantly in the dust and tearing shit apart, and you're breathing this all day. So I would be working with him, and he would have a big stereo ghetto blaster that he made himself. My dad was always building stuff. He was great at that. He made like one of the first ghetto blasters, and it was like powered with a battery, and you could play his 8-tracks and cassette tapes. So that was the only joy I got, was we were able to take this to the work sites. You're working in a house or a new house and you're putting down carpets, and I did all the pre-work of underlay and smooth edge. And we had that stereo blasting because there was nobody else there. And that's the only thing that really got me through was hearing music. So I'd bring my stuff and I'd bring stuff for my dad, and we'd listen to that all day. So that was great. But I think this all accumulated and caught up to my dad over the years. He started drinking again. And then it got to the point where his work was affected by that, and they noticed it, of course. And they were like, what happened here? He was like the best carpet layer in all of Edmonton and Vancouver area for years. His work was just superlative, no mistakes. And then, of course, he's like, hey, I'm drinking beer on the job every day, because that's, he liked beer. And that became even worse. So his work went down, and then he had to stop because he couldn't work at all anymore. He was just a drunk. And that continued for another 10 years. So I had this long history of, I didn't talk to him for a long time because of his history with drinking, and then we finally got reunited. And luckily that happened, 10 years before he died. So we had a good relationship on the last 10 years. I was back to making him music tapes. I was making him CDs. He didn't have the internet connection. He's like old school. He had a phone, and that was it. So if I had to make him music, I had to bring it on a CD. I had to bring it on cassette tape. Well, actually, it was just CDs at this point. And he was still enjoying it, and I always had fun making him compilations of things that maybe he didn't know or hadn't heard yet, but he had a really good collection. But then it caught up with him, and that's what happened. He was basically, he went to bed and he didn't wake up. So he went out really the best way possible. I wish that everybody could go that way. And, he still had his mind together. And, unlike my mother, who's now got dementia and she doesn't have more than a 5-minute memory, I was still able to talk to my dad, even, on the end, because, his brain was still functioning. His body and, lymphatic system was all falling apart, from the drinking and the smoking and years of that. And it's amazing he made it to 79. That's all I can say. After years of hard physical labor, he still could walk, even though, he was on his knees all the day. That was just absolute brutal, because you'd be on your knees and your back and you're having to lift this stuff. It's robot work, So you can imagine my feeling when it was like, I was like, okay, I'll help you, because I needed money. I wasn't working. So I was happy to make some money, probably made $6 an hour or something. But, while I was working, I was like, no, this is no good. And, pieces of concrete flying up in my face all day. And I didn't even wear glasses. That wasn't even required. My dad didn't care. There was absolutely no safety standards back then. It was, you cut yourself on the knife and you just wrap it up and you continue working, that kind of thing. So I was, I helped him for a few years on and off. And then finally, once he was not able to function and do his job properly, then I never had to do it again. And I was actually quite relieved. I was like, sometimes I had to come in from Vancouver to Abbotsford to help him for a week. So I would live with my parents for 4 days, and then I would quickly go back to Vancouver for the weekend and then go back again, to help him out. But anyway, Dad was a huge influence on me with music. So I hoped to get him to that Fogerty concert, and then he couldn't make it because he fell down on the pavement and he hurt himself. And I was like, I had the ticket and I couldn't sell it in time. So I went with my wife and we saw Fogerty, and I was like, yeah, it would have been so great if he could have been there, because he had never had a chance to see Fogerty play Creedence material. He only saw him with me in 1988 and didn't get to see the Creedence material. So, that's the way it goes, right? What can you do? I mean, the thought was there. So I wasn't like, I mean, obviously I was sad that he had died, but it was kind of like been preparing for it already, because, with the cancer scare, and so I was like, I don't know, and then it had come back, but anyway, we kind of expected it. But I was happy in the fact that I was on good terms with him, and we were always visiting him and giving him the music and talking on the phone, and that was the only way I could communicate with him, was talking on the phone. So, there was no he was not interested in internet, and he didn't even know what internet was. One time he even said to me on the phone, he says, I saw this TV ad. It said something .com. What is .com? And I had to explain this to him, what the internet was. Yeah, so that's how it was. There was one, I never got anything from my father. He didn't have a will. I didn't get any money. His partner got all the money because he didn't make a will. So that's what I say to everybody. Make sure you make a will. If you want your kids to get what you have, whatever it is, make a will. Because he used to talk to me about that. Oh, I'm going to give you my trailer, and his trailer was, it was just, he was living in a trailer for 10 years. But of course, once his, with the drinking and everything like that, it was not a pleasant place to be in there. It was always dirty and never cleaned it. So anyway, that all became moot because, he didn't have a will. So his partner got everything. And she was saying to me once, oh, would you like to have his stereo? And I'm like, no, I don't really need the stereo. It's just like a little stereo I had bought him. What I would have loved to have gotten from him were his 8-track tapes that he made when we were kids. Now, in the 60s, there was a radio program in Edmonton called Jukebox Saturday Night. And that's how you used to get your music compilations. He would record these shows from the radio because they would just play, a mix of 60s and 70s music. Well, at that time it would have been just 60s music. Did you jam with your dad? Did he even play an instrument? Yeah, here's another regret I have. My dad played harmonica quite well, and I never jammed with him. I think he was a little bit more into sort of folk songs, like old German folk songs, and he would play Beatles and Roy Orbison. But I should have done that, was get together with him and try to do a jam of something. So I should have recorded him play every song that he knew. Because now I've only got like a short 30-second clip that I did when he was in the trailer, like he was in the kitchen walking around. I was like, I better get this, and I would film him. But not very much, and not like a whole thing. And he used to do this on public transport all the time. He'd take the bus in Mission. He's wearing his cowboy hat. He's an old-style guy. He came from Germany, in 1960, the great land of Canada, the open spaces. Wanted to be a cowboy. So he and his brother came out here, and they were like wearing the cowboy hats and out there on the prairies, shooting pheasants, which he still had in his trailer. He had a 40-year-old, 50-year-old pheasant still sitting there stuffed. And then this thing was just encrusted with dust, and he never got rid of it. So, what was I talking about? So yeah, anyway, he made these compilations on 8-track, and I have such fond memories of those because we heard them so much, and the variety of music on there was all encompassing. It was like Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry and the Stones and Creedence and Pat Boone even, and the Ventures, and I mean, you name it, they were all in there. And we got so used to this music because we were hearing it all the time that we knew, especially I knew, exactly what was coming. So if you heard this song, it was like, hats off to Larry, this song. And then I knew exactly what would come after it because you'd been programmed to hear this so many times. You weren't hearing the radio. It was just a recording of all these songs. So I would have loved to have gotten those 8-tracks from him. You know, when he got divorced from my mother in the mid-90s, this stuff probably got thrown out or lost because he wasn't really listening to 8-tracks. Because I don't, you know, I would have loved to have that compilation again, just to have the memories of, oh yeah, I remember hearing this and I knew exactly, you know, oh, that song from the Fireballs was coming up, which was, again, a big influence on me. The song's called Torquay. It's like a 2-minute surf-style instrumental. A lot of people don't know this. It was Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs. They did that song called Sugar Shack. That's also early 60s. But they also did instrumentals. And that song, Torquay, was like the highlight for me of this compilation of all these bands on there, because it was like surf and it was this incredible rhythm, you know, you know, it sounded like Tequila or something, but I mean, they were all kind of similar, but I was totally, you know, influenced by that. I mean, and hearing it again and again, it was like, this is what put it together for me for music, was the rhythmic aspect of hearing, you know, it wasn't even so much like the solo in the beginning, although there was a little short solo in there that totally brought it home, very basic. And, you know, it was done in 2 minutes. And I was always sad when it was over. I was like, okay, here comes the rhythm. There's the build up, you know, and then the solo was cutting in, very clean, lots of reverb. And I was like, this is the best. So I was hearing that, and I was hearing Creedence. I was hearing Can't Get No Satisfaction. You know, I used to run around the house with my brother. Can't get no. We'd be constantly just like dancing in the living room to this stuff, you know, in the mid-60s. So it was because of my dad that I got into guitar. And, you know, they asked me eventually when I was 10, what do you want to play? You know, like, do you want to play an instrument, you know? First they were like, what about drums or something? And I was like, no, I want to play guitar. Because that was all fresh in my mind, you know, Fogerty playing Heard It Through the Grapevine. And, you know, this is something I've discussed with guys on the street. I have another video coming up where I have a discussion with another busker when I was playing downtown, like in 2018, talking about how good 60s and 70s music was and why was it good. And one of the big reasons it was good and better than what is out there today is these songs were not only, you know, really well constructed with actually more than one chord. Sometimes you have 2 chords and even 5 chords. You had stories in these songs. Like, think back to songs that you remember. Like, for me, what I remember great things about music, you know, like what made me into music was like hearing my dad playing songs like Big John, you know, which told a story. You know, at the bottom of this mine lies a big, big man, Big John. You know, there was a story in there. And when I heard that as a kid, it was a scary story. Because if you listen to the lyrics of Big John, it's about a guy who's going down into a mine shaft and trying to save people, and he gets killed. I mean, seriously. When you hear this as a kid, it can be kind of upsetting, you know? And you've got this, you know, this ominous beat and this minimalistic song, you know, there's really nothing going on there except the background vocal and the lead vocal and the thumping of the drums. I mean, this was like, I like to hear it, but it almost scared me when it came on, because I was like, oh, this guy is gonna die, you know, because you're a kid, you're affected by these stories, you get emotional. So that's an example of a song that affected me. Or, you know, Marty Robbins' El Paso, again, it's a story. You could read this story to a kid, and you got it in like 3 minutes, you know, with a tragic ending at the end of the story. Johnny Cash, the same thing. Think of anything, you know, what are the big ones from Boy Named Sue? You know, these are classics. They were telling stories. So I was talking to him about the 70s music, and I had just finished playing a Cher song on the street, which was called Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. I don't know if you remember this one. It's like 1971. It was a Billboard hit. I mean, Cher had some great songs in the 70s, so I thought, I'm going to try doing some Billboard hits from back then. So I was playing Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, which is a really great, well-written song, very interesting. It's fun to play. Of course, I didn't have any vocals, but then we started talking about how, you know, that kind of music was so memorable because of stories in it, and you know that just isn't being done anymore. You know, another one was Helen Reddy, a song called "Angie Baby." That came out in '74, and you know I heard that on the radio, and I was like, "What is this?" You know, I might be like, maybe I was in bed listening to my clock radio, or you know, and then hearing the story of Angie Baby, which is like it's like a horror story, like a ghost, and it's kind of freaky. And I eventually end up playing that song live in a duo. I had a singer. And in 2018, we actually managed to do this live. I think I've already posted this. So that's really what I remember so much about these songs. You know, either it was a great story in the song from start to finish. You know, it wasn't a repeat of lyrics. It wasn't like a continuous bridge chorus thing. There was actually different lyrics through the whole song, and you know, except for maybe the chorus, you saying "Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves" over and over. You know, but there would be a story with it. So these things all influence me, and yet today now I'm not really interested in lyrics. You know, maybe Bob Dylan would be an exception to a guy where I would actually listen to it and enjoy the lyrics. But I really got into instrumental music and sticking with the sounds, you know, like the extended jams that I was doing, and seeing what kind of world can you create with that. Like, just give me a guitar, give me a backing, and let me make my own story, you know. So I don't want to hear somebody's vocals over it. And this is part of the reason I got out of these bands too. I've been with singers for so many years, and I got tired of always having to sort of be in the background while they sang Adele or whatever, and I'm like bored out of my mind. I was like, no, I really want to play. I want to improvise. So I had to constantly compromise with these singers, and rarely did I have space to improvise and do what I wanted. And then when I had a chance, they're all kind of like, you know, they would never support what I was doing. It was kind of like, okay, he's doing his solo now. I'll just stand over here, or I'll look up at the ceiling. It was just ridiculous. So I remember both of those songs by Cher. Yeah. So that's part of the pressure I had, was like I never felt satisfied with the way live gigs were going. And that's why I started an instrumental trio, to be able to improvise and jam and get that out of my system. And I'm glad that I had a few years to do that, because now it doesn't exist anymore. You know, there's no more live venues. It's all shut down in the last 10 years. So, you know, it has been a pretty tough time for me, because I really tried to keep it going, you know, from like, say, 2008 is about the time I started with live bands. And I made it like through 10 years, but it was a real struggle, like so much work. You can't imagine. People always think, oh yeah, it's great to be in a band and all that, but you only see them on the stage and you think, yeah, it's great, yeah, but all the work it takes to get there. You know, there was constant dealing with managers. You know, I was in charge of doing all this work. I never got any help from anyone in my bands. Everybody just sort of like rode the gravy train. It's like, you know, because I would have to do the work, I have to find the gigs. So I would be contacting managers and emailing them, and you have to talk them into your band and getting a spot. And so there's constant promotion work, and then I have to make posters, and then you'd have to get the band members, you'd have to find a singer. So there was always singers, one after another. You know, maybe one lasted for 3 gigs, and then you had to get another one because that one didn't work out. It was, you know, personal problems. They didn't learn material properly. They couldn't learn enough material. They kept screwing up the material. I mean, I have some absolutely horrendous audition tapes. I should make a compilation of singers who came to these auditions and actually thought they could get in the band singing the way they were singing. I mean, you would not believe it when you hear this. And of course, the band would just look at me like, you have to deal with this. And I'd have to say, So did you actually listen to any of this music? And, it was just like, one after another. And then occasionally you'd get a good one and hope that would last. So this constant redoing of sets. You'd finally find a solid singer, or maybe, and you'd get a few shows out of it, and then you have to switch to another one, new songs, more rehearsal time, more costs for rehearsal time. Then I had problems with singers who didn't want to pay the rehearsal costs. Like they thought they should just be able to do everything for free. The band is splitting, they're all paying their share, and you don't have $10 for the rehearsal cost. That's how bad it got. I even paid the rent for one singer once, if you can believe this. And she was an older woman. She was already in her 50s. I'd help her out, fix her computer, buy her a CD player so she could learn songs from me. Everything to get the band going. I was like so devoted. I completely lost it. I started stepping into the realm of, like, okay, I'm going to help support you now because you can't do it yourself. So this one woman had problems paying her rent, and I remember lending her money to pay her rent. I mean, that's how sick I was. Like, think about it. I was so focused on, like, I just need to get this band going. I was just so focused on that, like, I would do anything. And then, of course, they take advantage of your generosity, and then you end up in the situation where you're helping them out financially. And then, of course, it all falls apart, and then they're screaming at you weeks later, like, like you're an asshole or something when you help them out financially. I mean, I went through it all. So luckily I kept a few people, like the bass player, kind of solid over the years. I never usually had problems with bass players. I had problems with drummers, but not with bass players, generally speaking. So eventually got the trio going, making instrumentals, and that kept me going from like 2012 to 2015, doing the trio, and I'm posting videos from that as well. But my last gig was 2018. I think I'm just about to post a video of my last gig with a duo singer. And we played the Sylvia Hotel, and that was the same night I ended up in hospital because I woke up that night with this serious side pain that didn't go away, and I had to walk to the hospital, and I suspect it might have been a kidney stone, but they put me on morphine for 8 hours, and then I walked home without any pain, so I don't know. I didn't pass anything. Still haven't figured that one out. But I was totally dehydrated. Probably, again, playing, not drinking enough. So that was my last gig in 2018. And the busking started 2015 and went to 2019 in the summer. So that's the last time I've been out. So right now, the only way I make any income is either from the street, which of course I haven't been doing for 2.5 years, selling my music on Bandcamp, and your support with Patreon and the YouTube membership. So I got the tip option for PayPal tip and buy me a coffee, and Patreon you can pledge. Again, that's even better. Like, if you're thinking about the membership thing, go to Patreon and do the $5, because I get like 90% of that, where if you do it on YouTube I only get 60%, 65. It's not as much because YouTube is taking a cut of everything. They take a cut of the ad revenue. They take a cut if you tip me during this chat, they'll take a cut of that. But I thank you for your support wherever it's coming from. But I just want to stress that Patreon is sort of my main thing now to survive. Basically, that's how I pay my rent. And I'm basically trying to create this music all the time, put it out there, put it on Bandcamp. And then you see the video on YouTube, and you can buy the music on Bandcamp in much higher quality. So I'm hoping to get out again next month and try to supplement some income with street playing, and that's never a lot. Like, I can be out there, it might take an hour before I even make $2. I never know. Sometimes it'll come quick, and sometimes it takes 2 hours. So it's not easy to predict like who's going to be out there. But I'm going to try to get some new recordings and new jams that I haven't done before. So when you have any suggestions for things you want to hear, and try to keep in mind jams, because I don't want to get in the situation again where I'm doing straight covers that instantly get copyrighted by YouTube, because I would not make any money on them. I make a little bit now on ad revenue, like a few cents. If you see an ad for 6 seconds, I get a few cents from that. So just let those ads run if you see them, because that helps the channel, right? So sign up. subscribe and like and leave a comment. These are all things that push my videos to be seen. It's very hard to be seen. You know, occasionally I'll get one that's going for becoming, you know, viral, which the last one was this Doobie Brothers video from 2 months ago. That's over 1 million views now. Again, I don't get any money from it because it got copyrighted by the record company. So those million views and the ad revenue for that goes straight to the record company. So now I'm trying to do more things on the street where it'll be like a, you know, maybe a familiar song, but with me jamming, and that will avoid the copyright. And that way I can get some income from ads on that. Anyway, I think there's another one there. Allman Brothers Band, Brothers and Sisters. I also play almonds on the street. So there's a few records. I just wanted to show you a few things like that. So I'm going to put this list together and then put it up. And you can start, if you see anything, just let me know and then we can talk about it. Like I say, most of these albums are in vinyl grading standards. I would say VG plus to excellent to near mint, because they really haven't been played much. I always took really good care of my records. So anything else I wanted to talk about? Like I say, I can't see the chat here. I don't know why. It's not showing it. I mean, I'm going live here, and yet I don't see it anywhere. So I'll have to answer them later after in the comments section. So I think I'll wrap it up. It's been already, oh gosh, it's been 81 minutes. Wow. And yeah, so I think I basically talked about everything. It's a crazy time in Canada right now. I think this live chat should be available. I'm hoping it will be, because normally when I'm doing this and I finish, it then posts later and you can watch it. So I have never done it through the phone before. So I'm hoping that this is going to work. And you'll be able to view as soon as I'm done and see it later. So, like I say, yeah, I don't know if you're all watching the news. It's crazy, insane times in Canada right now, and I'm not really going to get into a conversation about it. But a lot of people under stress, you know, including myself. So music is my way of kind of dealing with this situation. It always has been over the last 2 years. So I'm going to get back to a jam like right away here. I've got already a song written, and yeah, I'm happy to, you know, sit down and share some stories. It kind of comes out all at once. I mean, this is almost like a therapy for me as well. You know that. Well, thank you for your comment there. You're an inspiration to many. Stay strong. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm trying to, and like I say, it's you know, it's basically my wife and music that's keeping me going right now. I mean, most of you know I had my near-death experience last year, and came out of that, and got back into guitar playing again, you know, slowly, and still able to do it. The fingers are still working, the brain's still working. And I'm still writing music, you know, mostly every day. It's usually in the morning. I'm still in bed. I write a track on Bandcamp, and then try to get the jam in. So I will get back to that later. I just put up a video, a short one. It's like 10 seconds, probably the shortest clip I ever put up. It's the, I can't believe what this little girl did while I was playing on the street. It's quite cute. But I think everybody can get through that video. It's like 10 seconds. So I keep putting up my videos. It's going to be, like I say, an assortment of live jams from home, which will be the extended jams, which some of you like. It's not like a huge amount, you know, people that are watching these jams, because I think attention spans are like 30 seconds these days. But there are those out there that do appreciate these long jams, and, you know, I'm doing it for you, and hope you're enjoying it. And I hope you can then check it out on Bandcamp as well. You know, leave a tip for it. And, you know, if you don't want to bother with buying the track to download or stream on Bandcamp. But yeah, check out my links and sign up and subscribe. I hate to say that because most people say that all the time in every video. Please like and subscribe. I always hated it because I thought that would be self-evident that you would do that if you enjoyed somebody's channel. But I never do it, and I find that there's a lot of people still in my comment section have not subscribed to the channel. It's really bizarre. Like, they are commenting all the time, and it's great, but they are not subscribed, so I don't get that. But this is what helps to be seen. You know, once the subs go up and comments as well, you know, leave comments. Don't worry about repeating, or just, I mean, you can ask another question or something. It's fine. I will answer all comments if you have a question. And that is what sort of gets things into the algorithm, and then they become seen. So I'm trying to figure out the trick, and it's not easy. You know, my last one was that Doobie Brothers thing, and total fluke. Now it's over 1 million views. I've posted videos again of the same band, same singer, and they don't get anywhere near that amount of attention. So I don't know why. I didn't even mention it was Doobie Brothers in the title. I just said, do you know this song? Do you remember this song? That's all. I've been using that for a while now. Okay, so yeah, I'm a bit talked out. I need a drink, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I was glad to talk to you. It's like therapy for me as well. So I'm really glad I could do this, and I'll continue probably videos in the next 3 days, and keep it to the weekend. And then, you know, take a break from Monday to Wednesday, because it seems most of the audience is not around anyway at that time. And then I don't want to overwhelm people. Though I have such a backlog now, like my original work, you know, I've got like 200 videos. What does that mean? Does that mean you have to pay us? Yeah, that's right. Yes. I should put a picture of Freud up there or something. I mean, I am on the couch. I'm just not lying down. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate the chance to talk. I mean, people don't really do it that much anymore. I mean, you know, I'm not really into typing constant conversations, but it's fun to get out and talk about, you know, what, you know, influenced me as a kid and all that. So I'm always happy to share these stories. Anyway, I'm going to try to end this now, and I'm not quite sure how that even works. So thanks for watching, everybody. And I'll talk to you on the next one.